Hi everybody, this is Emma from Abel here. Today I'm painting a picture inspired by the movie Kong, Skull Island. That's just hit cinemas this week. Like last week, I'll be doing a spoiler-free mini movie review for the first part of the video, and then I'll have a little chat about my art with you after that. I'll try and put an annotation somewhere though. If you'd like to skip to the art talk, I'll also leave the timestamp in the comments down below if I can. Before I begin, the scene I'm painting here was inspired by the trailer, as like last week, I've painted this the week prior to the movie's release. In the trailer, one scene that really caught my eye was like the villagers/warriors that were guarding the ruins. Now, I've taken a few artistic liberties with my depiction of them. Obviously, if you were painted in camouflage, you wouldn't be wearing a bright red loincloth, but I added the red to really just add contrast to the green leaves and foliage in the background. Today I'm painting with Winsor Newton gouache on Arch's hot press paper, but I'll add a more comprehensive list of my art materials in the description below, including what I used for the outline that you see there. Enough of that, onto the review. When watching the trailer for Kong, to be honest, I wasn't very excited. I mean, I liked the Peter Jackson version from 2005, but I don't know, something just didn't sit right with me. So going into the movie, I was a bit skeptical, but right from the opening title sequence, I was captivated. The opening credits were really unique, and they really did set the scene. Very visually stunning. There were some cool camera angles, and the colors caught my attention, and this very cool imagery was carried on throughout the entire movie, by the way. It was a very aesthetically pleasing movie. As we were introduced to the cast, though, I realized almost immediately that the script, in terms of dialogue, was quite weak. Now, I don't mean that the story didn't make sense or that the acting was bad. I literally mean the actors probably could have created a more meaningful and authentic dialogue if they'd been ad-libbing. It was that bad. I really do think that the cast, though, did the best with what they had. It did get better as the movie went on, but there were just a couple of instances, especially in the beginning, that didn't work. Speaking of the cast, though, this movie had some really big names. It was awesome to see so many different actors from all walks of Hollywood, old and new, who you wouldn't necessarily imagine being in a movie together, let alone having chemistry, but that was really cool to see. Now, all of the actors, with the exception of one, really did give great performances. I won't name names, but let's just say that this particular actress tends to get shoehorned into movies purely to make them more appealing to the Chinese market. No hate, no hate. I just don't think this particular actress was quite right for this movie. But anyway, moving on. My only gripe with having such a big cast full of amazing actors is that the characters weren't fleshed out too well. There were some that seemed very interesting, and I wanted to know more about them, you know? I wanted to get some insight so that I could really understand why they are acting the way they are. Sorry, but we just didn't get the chance, which was a bit of a shame. Another aspect of this movie, which I think really adds to the experience, is that there are a lot of surprising deaths. No spoilers, of course, but they're not shy about killing people off, and they're not scared to do it in really brutal and sometimes even heartbreaking ways. There were some moments in the film where, like, I had picked out in my head, oh, you know, the rest of the cast is safe now. These are the main characters. They'll make it. Nope. And if you've seen any other reviews for this movie, you'll know that there were plenty of action scenes, and they were amazing. Especially the first one that we got a glimpse of in the trailers, where Kong is attacking the helicopters as they approach Skull Island. Really, really cool stuff. Kong himself was interesting as well. Unlike every other version of him that I've ever seen, he was a little bit less ape-like and a bit more human, if that makes sense. And by that I mean he did walk on his hind two legs as opposed to standing on all fours like a silverback. And they really fleshed out his character too, perhaps even more than some of the actual actors. As we found out in the trailer, there are other monsters on the island, obviously. And at first, when the crew first lands on the island, I was looking at the creatures like, really? An antelope was all you could come up with? You know, in Peter Jackson's version, at least we had dinosaurs. But as the movie progresses, the creatures get weirder and weirder, and it's really cool to see. I just have one, again, gripe with the skull crawlers, and this isn't a spoiler as well, but just for the entirety of the movie, you've got John C. Reilly's character foreshadowing, oh, these skull crawlers, no, these are just the babies. Wait till you see the big mama, you know? And then later on, when we finally do see the big one, it's just kind of hard to appreciate how ginormous she is because you never actually get to see her compared to the babies. You know what I mean? It was just it's really a non-issue. It didn't take away from the fight scene at all. It was still really interesting to watch, but that's just one takeaway I kind of had. Looking to the future now, I'm really looking forward to seeing the Godzilla sequel that King Kong is meant to cameo in 2019. Apparently, Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things is set to be one of the leads, which I never would have expected, but hey, I'm not complaining. The only thing I am worried for is the sizing difference between Godzilla and King Kong. In the Showdown movie that's set to come out in 2020. That's just because, Godzilla was huge in the last movie, and it'll be interesting to see how King Kong not only matches up in terms of size, but how he deals with those blue laser beams that Godzilla burps out as well. But overall, I would recommend you go see this movie. If you're looking for a fun night out with friends, you won't be disappointed. I would rate this movie a 3.5 paintbrushes out of 5. And if you've already seen this movie and would like to see a spoiler review, I recommend you go check out Beyond the Trailer. I'll link it down below, but I found that review very informative and fun. Alright, now onto the art talk. Congratulations if you made it this far. I know it got a bit tedious there for a moment. There were a lot of leaves. It was a lot of green. I understand. I'm sorry. But don't worry, it does only go up from here. As you can see now, I'm doing a few cool little details in the hair there. And that's really what I enjoyed most about this piece, was doing the finer details, like the hair and the skin, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is a gouache painting. The reason I chose gouache as opposed to watercolour is because I really wanted to play with the opacity of this piece. For those of you who don't know, gouache, I would describe it as a really cool mix between like watercolour and acrylic, where if you water it down and apply it thinly, you can use it exactly like watercolour. It will flow pretty much the same. But if you choose to go in thicker, like I did in the front few leaves and the little toga slash skirts they have going on there, you get these really vibrant, juicy colours. And that's really what I was going for. The scene I'm actually painting is loosely based on the trailer. In the trailer, we were presented with these strong, fearless warriors ready to attack. And in my mind, I was kind of playing with the idea that what if Kong was having a bad day? What if Kong's throwing a temper tantrum, and maybe these strong, fearless warriors aren't so strong and fearless? Maybe they're a little bit scared. And that's why I've got, a couple of people hiding in the background. I've got this front guy holding the other guy back, like, dude, it's not worth it. Let's sit this one out. So that's why I drew what I did. Now, a few things I struggled with in this piece actually was the drawing itself. Now, composition isn't my strong suit. I'm perfectly fine with colors and mixing colors, creating nice color palettes. Just my sketching has never been up to par. I think I did really well with this piece though. I'm quite proud of it. The one thing I was worried about, in particular though, throughout the middle of the piece, I was getting scared that perhaps it was getting a little bit too busy. So that's why I decided to have more muted colors in the background and just have those bright, vibrant pops of red and green in the front. I didn't want to give you guys a headache while watching this, and I didn't want people to be sick of looking at it. That's also why I've left the border of the page white. I didn't want the piece to be too chaotic. Right here, I'm mixing up a couple of shades of grey and I'm working on the skin of these warriors. It's I think it looks really cool, the final product, but all I'm doing here is a very loose, messy cross-hatching technique. You're just going up and down, side to side. And if you have enough water, the paint will start to flow a bit, and it'll look a little bit less like, perfect checkerboard. And just like, they've laid the clay onto their skin for camouflage. Again, forgive me for giving them the red loincloth. I know it doesn't make sense if you were thinking critically, but just visually, I thought it looked really cool. What I did to mark in the yellow there, I actually used a Prisma-colour pencil, just, any yellow pencil would do if you were trying to recreate this. What was cool about it though was because the pencil is kind of waxy, the watercolor, or I mean the gouache rather, kind of resisted where I had drawn in the pencil. So that meant even if I painted over it, 90% of the time the yellow would still show through, and that's really what I wanted. Because in the trailer they do have these really cool yellow tattoos, and I just thought it was very interesting to look at. What you'll see me do in a little bit is start adding some shadow and finer details to the leaves in the front of the picture. Something I want to touch on is a really cool thing about gouache and watercolor, is that if you lay down a color and you're not too happy with it, or perhaps you make a mistake, you can actually go back in with some water or a different color and lift it off, which is what you can see I'm doing right now. That's something you can't do with acrylic paint though, even though it is water-based. So I found it actually came in handy quite a bit. Later on, I make a mistake and accidentally drop in some red where there shouldn't be, and it literally takes no more than 2 or 3 seconds to come back in and just clean that up. So that's a really cool thing about gouache that I quite enjoy. I'm gonna leave you shortly. What I do towards the end of the piece, I just add in a few details here and there, and I go back in and redefine all of the prominent shapes that I want. Whether it's the stone wall in the back or going over some of the leaves. Just because the gouache is so opaque, it did cover up some of my original line work. So I'm gonna leave you with some music. Before I do though, if you have any questions, comments, or compliments, please leave them in the comments down below. If you have any recommendations, I would love to hear them. If you do like this format, please let me know. Otherwise, if you don't like it, I'm going to keep doing it. You need to tell me, otherwise I'm clueless. Alright, this has been Emma for Abel here. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook under the same name. And I'll see you next week. Bye.